You are losing money, not because the market is against you, but because there is a voice inside your head that has been making decisions for you, and you have never once stopped to ask where it came from. Think about the last trade you hesitated on. You saw the setup, clean and clear, just like the one you studied for weeks. Your rules said enter. Your system said go. But right before you clicked the button, something whispered. Last time you felt this confident, you lost. What if this time is the same? Maybe wait for one more confirmation. And in that single moment of doubt, you either froze and watched price run without you, or you entered late, chasing, desperate, only to get stopped out at the worst possible moment. That was not intuition. That was not experience. That was an old recording playing on repeat, a sentence learned years ago when you were hurt, and your brain has been using it ever since to protect you from feeling that pain again. Most traders think they are trading the chart, but they are actually trading their past. Every entry you take, every stop you move, every position you size up or cut early, all of it is filtered through a lens you did not choose. You learned how to feel about winning and losing the same way you learned how to speak, not from a book, but from experience, from emotional reactions, from moments that carved themselves into your nervous system. Somewhere early in your trading journey, you lost money and felt shame. You compared yourself to someone else's profit screenshot and felt inadequate. You took a big loss and felt stupid. And in that moment, your brain did not just record the trade, it recorded the meaning you attached to it. Losing means you are bad. Being wrong means you are incompetent. Missing a trade means you are weak. From that point on, your brain stopped asking what does the chart say and started asking will this trade make me feel that old pain again? If the answer was maybe, it sabotaged your plan. Not because you lack discipline, but because your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is trying to keep you safe using outdated information, like running a computer with software from 5 years ago and wondering why it crashes every time you open something new. The problem is not that you are mentally weak. The problem is that no one ever taught you that trading psychology is not about toughness. It is about recognizing which voice in your head is actually yours and which one is an echo from a version of you that no longer exists. There is a reason you keep doing the same things even though you know better. You have read the books. You have watched the videos. You understand risk management, position sizing, emotional control. You can explain to someone else exactly what they should do. But when you are in the trade, hands shaking, heart pounding, none of that knowledge is accessible. Because knowledge lives in one part of your brain, but emotion lives in another, deeper part. The part that moves faster, speaks louder, and does not care what you learned last week. That part only knows what it felt when you blew up your account, when you were stopped out 5 times in a row, when you went all in and lost everything. And it will do anything, break any rule, ignore any system, just to avoid feeling that way again. You think the problem is discipline, so you try to force yourself harder. You make stricter rules. You punish yourself for breaking them. You tell yourself next time will be different. But force does not work on the subconscious. You cannot yell at a scared child and expect them to be brave. And that is what you are doing every time you beat yourself up for overtrading, for cutting a winner early, for revenge trading after a loss. You are trying to intimidate a part of yourself that only knows fear, and all you do is make it more afraid, which makes it grip the steering wheel even tighter. Let me tell you what is actually happening when you sabotage a trade. You are not weak. You are not undisciplined. You are running 2 systems at the same time. One system, the logical one, sees the setup and knows what to do. The other system, the emotional one, sees the setup and remembers what happened last time you felt this way. And when those 2 systems disagree, emotion wins almost every time. Not because emotion is stronger, but because emotion is faster. By the time your logical brain finishes saying this is a good trade, your emotional brain has already pressed the button, moved the stop, or closed the position. And then you sit there, staring at the screen, asking yourself, why did I do that again? The answer is simple but uncomfortable. You did it Because you have been training yourself to do it. Every time you overtrade out of boredom, you teach your brain that sitting still is unbearable. Every time you cut a trade early because you are afraid of giving back profits, you teach your brain that holding through volatility is dangerous. Every time you revenge trade after a loss, you teach your brain that losing is something that must be fixed immediately. These are not bad habits, they are learned behaviors. And the scariest part is, you learned them without realizing it. You were not sitting there thinking today, I will train myself to overtrade. It just happened, slowly, one emotional reaction at a time, until it became automatic. Here is something most traders never realize. The habits that make you lose money do not start when you click the button. They start much earlier, in the seconds before the trade, in the way you talk to yourself. If the voice in your head says, you always mess up at the end of a winning streak, then guess what you will do when you are up for the week? You will find a way to mess it up. Not because you want to, but because your brain is following the script it was given. If the voice says you are not allowed to lose 2 trades in a row, then after one loss, you will overtrade, increase size, break rules, anything to avoid being wrong again. The voice does not say, I am an old belief that is no longer useful. It says this is just how you are. This is just how trading is. And because it sounds like truth, you never question it. Most traders live in a fog of unnamed emotions. They say I feel off today. I feel restless. I feel uncomfortable. But uncomfortable about what? Restless in what way? When you cannot name the feeling, you cannot work with it. It just becomes a vague pressure in your chest, a tightness in your stomach, and your brain interprets that as danger. And to the brain, a vague danger is always more threatening than a specific one. So it pushes you to do something, anything, just to make the feeling stop. You enter a trade you should not take. You close a trade you should hold. You increase size without reason. Not because you planned it, but because your brain needed to escape the discomfort, and action, any action, feels like relief. There is a skill the best traders have that is almost never taught. It is not about reading charts or managing risk. It is the ability to put language on their own emotions. They do not say I feel off. They say I am anxious because I just took 3 losses in a row, and I am afraid the 4th one will prove I am bad at this. They do not say I feel restless. They say I am bored because the market is slow, and I am tempted to force a trade, just to feel like I am doing something. The moment you name the emotion correctly, it loses half its power. It stops being a monster hiding in the fog and becomes something specific, something limited, something you can work with. You cannot fix what you cannot see. And you cannot see what you cannot name. Let me tell you about a pattern that destroys more traders than any bad setup ever will. You start trading well. You follow your rules. You take clean entries. You manage risk. Your account starts growing. Everything feels smooth. And then, out of nowhere, you blow it. You take a stupid trade. You go all in on something that does not fit your system. You hold a loser way past your stop. Within days, sometimes hours, you give back everything you just made. And you sit there, confused, angry, asking yourself what happened. I was doing so well. Why did I sabotage it? Here is the uncomfortable truth. You did not sabotage it because you got careless. You sabotaged it because winning felt unfamiliar. If you have spent years struggling, losing, feeling inadequate, then struggle becomes your baseline. It becomes the emotional state your brain recognizes as normal. And when things start going well, when you start making money consistently, a part of your brain does not feel relief. It feels danger. Because to the brain, safe does not mean good. Safe means familiar. And if losing has been familiar for a long time, then winning feels like walking into a room you have never been in before. It feels wrong. It feels temporary. It feels like something bad is about to happen. So what does your brain do? It creates the bad thing before life does. It makes you take a reckless trade, break a rule, do something that pulls you back to the emotional state you know. And the crazy part is, after you blow up, you feel relief. Not happiness but relief. Because now everything makes sense again. Now you are back in familiar territory. The tension is gone. The fear of losing what you built is gone. Because you already lost it. And your brain sighs and says, see, this is who you really are. This is where you belong. This is not weakness. This is not lack of discipline. This is self-sabotage as a defense mechanism. And it is one of the most painful things to recognize in yourself, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You start noticing the pattern. Every time you get close to a breakthrough, something inside you pulls the emergency brake. And the worst part is, it does not feel like self-sabotage in the moment. It feels like a good idea. It feels like taking control. It feels like fixing a mistake. Only later, when the damage is done, do you realize what happened. And by then, you are already back at square one, wondering why you keep doing this to yourself. Many traders are not just afraid of losing. They are afraid of winning. It sounds backwards, but think about it. If you grew up in an environment where doing well meant being envied, criticized, or having expectations placed on you, then your brain learned that success is dangerous. It learned that standing out brings scrutiny. It learned that being happy makes you a target. And now, when your trading account starts growing, a quiet voice whispers you are getting too comfortable. Something bad is coming. Better destroy it yourself before someone else does. At least then you control the pain. This is why so many traders prefer trading in chaos. They like trading when they are tired, when they are emotional, when the market is choppy and unclear. Not because they are stupid, but because chaos is familiar. Calm feels strange. Stability feels suffocating. Consistent profitability feels like waiting for the other shoe to drop. So they create drama. They break rules. They take wild trades. And they call it the market being difficult, when really, they are making it difficult because difficulty is the only place they know how to exist. Now here is where most traders get stuck. They read everything I just said and think, okay, I understand now. I know why I self-sabotage. I know why I overtrade. I know why I revenge trade. Problem solved. But understanding is not the same as changing. In fact, understanding can become a hiding place. You can explain your behavior perfectly, like a psychology professor, and still do the exact same things the next day. Because explaining is safe. Explaining keeps you at a distance. You analyze the problem without actually feeling it. And the thing that is actually driving your behavior, the raw emotion underneath, is still there, untouched. There is a very subtle trap many traders fall into. They intellectualize their emotions. Instead of saying I am scared, they say this is a natural amygdala response to perceived risk based on past conditioning. It sounds smart. It sounds like you are working on yourself. But it is also a way to avoid sitting with the actual feeling. And if you never sit with the feeling, you never learn how to be in the trade while the feeling is present. You only learn how to talk about it afterwards. Think about learning a new language. You cannot just read grammar books and expect to be fluent. You have to speak, even when you sound awkward, even when you make mistakes, even when it feels uncomfortable. Emotions are the same. If you never allow yourself to feel fear without running from it, to feel greed without acting on it, to feel disappointment without revenge trading, then you never become fluent in your own emotional experience. And trading only tests one thing. Not how much you know, but what you do when you feel something uncomfortable. The market does not care if you understand psychology. It only cares if you can feel afraid and still follow your plan. Here is what most traders do not realize. You are not trying to eliminate emotions. You are trying to not let emotions grab the steering wheel. Those are two completely different goals. Elimination is impossible. You are human. You will always feel fear, greed, impatience, frustration. But you do not have to let those feelings make decisions for you. The best traders are not emotionless. They are emotional, but they have learned to feel without being hijacked. They can be afraid and still execute the trade. They can be disappointed and still stick to the plan. They can be tempted and still say no. That is not superhuman strength. It is a skill. And like any skill, it is built through repetition. You do not learn it by reading more books. You learn it by sitting in the discomfort, over and over, until your brain realizes this feeling will not kill me. I can be afraid and still be okay. I can lose and still be okay. I can win and still be okay. That is the only way the old programming starts to fade, not by force, but by proof. Your brain needs evidence that the old rules are no longer true. And the only way to give it that evidence is to do the thing you are afraid of and survive it. Let me be very clear about something. Fixing trading habits is not about becoming perfect. It is not about never breaking a rule again. It is not about never feeling fear or greed or impatience. It is about noticing those things faster and choosing differently more often. That is all. You will still mess up. You will still have days where you overtrade, where you revenge trade, where you break every rule you set for yourself. And that does not mean you failed. It means you are human. The only difference between a trader who stays stuck and a trader who moves forward is what they do after they mess up. If you beat yourself up, call yourself an idiot, spiral into shame, your brain learns one thing: being wrong is dangerous. And next time, it will work even harder to avoid that feeling, even if it means sabotaging the trade. But if you can sit there, look at what you did, and say, yeah, I did it again, not ideal, but I see it more clearly now, then you are building something rare. You are building self-awareness without self-violence. You are building discipline through compassion, not force. Most traders think discipline means being hard on yourself. But real discipline is being kind enough to yourself that you do not need to prove anything. You do not need to make back a loss immediately. You do not need to force a trade to feel productive. You do not need to take revenge on the market because you feel stupid. Real discipline is being calm enough to let a bad day be a bad day without turning it into a bad week. It is being secure enough to take a loss without needing it to mean something about who you are. It is being patient enough to wait for your setup, even when every part of you wants to do something, anything, just to feel like you are in control. Let me tell you what changes when you start working on this. It is not dramatic. There is no moment where everything clicks and you never struggle again. It is quieter than that. You start noticing the voice in your head a split second earlier. You start naming the emotion before it takes over. You start pausing between the feeling and the action. Not every time, but more often, and slowly, over weeks and months, you realize you are not fighting yourself as much. The trades feel less chaotic. The losses sting less. The wins do not make you euphoric. Everything just feels more steady, more normal. And one day, you look back and realize you have not blown up your account in 6 months. You have not revenge traded in weeks. You have not moved a stop out of fear in days. Not because you forced it, but because it stopped making sense to do those things. That is the goal. Not perfection. Not eliminating emotions. Just getting to a place where the most reasonable thing is also the easiest thing. Where following your plan does not require willpower. It just feels like the obvious choice. Where discipline is not something you force, it is just what you do because you trust yourself enough to know that deviating from the plan always makes things worse. But here is what you need to accept. That place is not reached by reading this script. It is not reached by understanding the psychology. It is reached by doing the work, trade by trade, emotion by emotion, mistake by mistake. It is reached by sitting with the fear of missing out and not taking the trade. It is reached by feeling the urge to revenge trade and closing the platform instead. It is reached by watching your account grow and resisting the urge to sabotage it. Every single time you feel the pull and choose differently, you rewire the pattern a little bit. And over time, the pull gets weaker. There is no shortcut. There is no magic sentence that makes it all click. There is only repetition. Feeling the thing, not acting on it, proving to your brain that you can survive the discomfort. That is the work. And it is harder than learning any strategy, any indicator, any system. Because it requires you to be honest with yourself in a way most people never are. It requires you to admit, I am the reason I keep losing. Not the market, not the broker, not bad luck, me, my fear, my greed, my need to be right, my inability to sit still. That is a painful thing to admit. But it is also the most liberating thing you will ever realize. Because if you are the problem, then you are also the solution. You do not need a better strategy. You do not need a more accurate indicator. You do not need to find the perfect market condition. You need to stop letting the voice in your head, the one that was formed when you were hurt and scared and inexperienced, make decisions for you. You need to recognize that voice. Name it, thank it for trying to protect you, and then gently set it aside. Because it does not know what you know now. It does not have the skills you have now. It is operating on old information, and every time you listen to it, you are choosing the past over the present. Trading will always be uncomfortable. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be losses. There will always be moments where you do not know what will happen next. But you do not need certainty to trade well. You just need to be okay with not knowing. You need to be okay with being wrong. You need to be okay with missing a trade. You need to be okay with winning without waiting for it to be taken away. And that okayness, that inner steadiness, is not something you find. It is something you build, one choice at a time. So if you are losing money, stop looking at your strategy first. Stop blaming the market first. Stop searching for a new system first. Sit down, open a journal, and ask yourself one question. What is the voice in my head saying right before I break my rules? Write it down, word for word. And then ask, where did I learn that? When did I start believing that? Is it still true? Most of the time, you will realize it is not. It was true once, maybe when you were new, maybe when you were reckless, maybe when you did not have a plan. But it is not true now. And once you see that, once you really see it, the voice starts to lose its grip. This is not about fixing everything overnight. This is about starting to pay attention, starting to notice, starting to name, starting to choose. And if you do that consistently, patiently, without expecting perfection, you will look back 6 months from now and realize something shifted. Not because you read the right book or found the right strategy, but because you stopped being controlled by a version of yourself that no longer exists. You started trading as who you are now, not who you were when you were hurt. And that changes everything.